Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you want to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 91 of Breaking Step. The doors had locks, but they weren't engaged. Tibbs focused on sensing the door harder, trying to find a trap, but there were no weaves into this in the or through the stone. Through the stone. Is this place like the permit office? Tibbs asked, where anyone can come and go? Not just anyone will be allowed in, I expect, Don replied, but yes, merchant and the nobility would simply go in. Why have a lock then? Jekyll asked. Because the city hall wouldn't be accessible all day long, the sorcerer answered. So it made sense for the door to be unlocked. It didn't reassure Tibbs. Genny was going to use that against them at some point. He pulled on one door and it slowly opened. The floor to the large lobby had a layer of dust that Tibbs would guess at a few months old in a normal building. Instead of one long counter divided for each teller, 1 and 3 desks were set through the room with seats on each side. Opposite them, a large stairwell led to a balcony supported by four stone column decorated with inlaid metal, which went around the. Where is everyone? Mez asked. Tibbs looked at the floor again, and the lack of tracks in the dust registered. I don't know, Don replied. I doubt it would be as busy as the permit office, but there should be city servants waiting for people. Maybe no one talked about how the city hall works? The archer offered, and the sorcerer shrugged. At least, Jekyll said, there's no danger of you getting in line with the others. Which means there will be another kind of danger, Don replied. Tibbs used air to remove the dust from the floor before them and exposed 6-sided tiles of the same color. The same color as what? Um, Tibbs used air to remove the dust from the floor before them and exposed 6-sided tiles of the same deep brown color, the size of his palm. The walls were lined with stone benches and pots between them, with a dark-colored leaf plant in them. That had to be something Stowe had created, since Tibbs couldn't guess how a plant would survive without care for however long the building had been here. That and the dust. He sensed the floor, and again there were no weaves, or at least none he could sense. He couldn't forget this fog might block his sense in ways he didn't understand yet. He sent water over the floor, sensing for cracks and gaps through it. He sensed none, but he also couldn't entirely rely on this either. Even on the third floor, Ganny had become adept at masking the physical triggers. Still, he had one way to neutralize those she couldn't do anything about. He iced the water. I don't sense essence triggers, but stay on your guard. The fog is messing with that. The only thing the dungeon made are the plants and the dust. Are the plants creatures? uh, to me, it's obvious it would be a Dawn question, but Tibbs considered that. They had to be, since Stu had made them, but they don't have any more essence than real plants. I think they're just decoration. For now. If the building's empty, Jekyll said, maybe I was wrong about there being loot here. I saw movements. I saw movement at the window on the other floor. Mess said before Tibs could go along with Jekyll's idea. The fighter smiled. Well then, we know where to start. It would be wise, Commodore said, to remember that regardless of what you expect, it is possible the golem Mez noticed or notice nothing more than props. In how the dungeon believed this building functions. And that isn't because we didn't notice any of the windows on this floor, Dawn added, that there are none. Okay, I need to check something. Walls were made of stone. Arrangements for the windows that line the outside close together had light shining through with an occasional shadow blocking it. Okay, and then this I'm going to... And it's possible those shadows against the windows on this floor, Dawn added, were golems standing still and waiting for... Of course. For someone to enter. Can you sense any, Tibs? Jekyll asked. Tibs breathed this fear down. It wasn't because he usually pushed his sense in every direction when he extended it that he had to do that. That he had to do that now. That he had to do that now. He often focused it on something. Only those tended to be close items. Only those tended to be close. Bin? Yeah. Extending his sense in only one direction wasn't the same. To be safe, he began with the floor above them, pushing his sense up instead of around. That was working, and with his worry easing, he could focus on studying the fog for an indication of the golem Mez had noticed. There, a ripple in the fog. This wasn't like the sorcerers in the library. They'd used an etching to hide. This was the fog interacting with... The form was like a person from outside, not the ones Stowe had made as living in the city. Now that he knew what to sense for, he could make out more of them. A lot more. Some were seated, some stood, but didn't move, while others walked back and forth along the wall before the window. It was a short walk that had the feel of only being there to attract attention from outside. There's definitely people upstairs, he said. Sorry, there's definitely golden people upstairs, he said, lowering his sense to this floor. There were also many of them, and there was something else below. Tibs? Jekyll held him, sounding near panic. Tibs, come on, talk to me. I'm okay, he replied, but his voice sounded off. Why was Jekyll holding him, and why did his head feel like lightning had exploded in it? Are you sure? Dawn asked, sounding concerned. He's been calling your name for a while. I was sensing the floor then. He tried to piece together the fragment, then shuddered. My sense brushed against the thing under us. You. You screamed at pain, Jekyll said. I caught you before you hit the floor, but you weren't answering me. At least he'd reflexively pulled his sense in. I don't think I should use my sense this close to it. I don't want to accidentally sense more of it. At least that mistake of yours is good for something, the them said. If you tell me how to undo it, I would, Stowe replied. And I have told you, I don't know what it is. Everything here is older than what I know. I don't understand how you don't know how you caused it. Stowe doesn't always pay attention to what he does when he's just playing around with essence to see what will happen. You weren't paying any more attention to it, Stowe protested. That isn't why I'm here, she replied in a stiff tone. I warned you about the danger of using void without care, but you didn't listen to me. I did listen. That's why I did it in that room. Doing it in a room you have no idea what it does isn't being careful. It's the opposite. I'm with them on this one. Tibs? Jekyll asked, sounding worried again. Sorry. He rubbed his temple and tried to tune out the argument. He couldn't tell if Genny was really angry or if she and Stowe were acting for some reason. Don is right. There are people golems on this floor. This is a big building, Jekyll said, eyeing the stairs. Maybe we should just do the second floor? That's where the boss will be, and with the boss is the best loot. You can't be certain of that, Don said. Tibs, Jekyll said, grinning. How about you tell Don where the boss is? No. He ignored the look of betrayal. I didn't sense anything that could be the boss creature, and I'm not extending my sense again to look for it. I'm not risking... He shuddered. I understand, but they have always been at the end of... The dungeon gets craftier with each run, Jackal, Don said, exasperated. How many... Whoops. No. The dungeon gets craftier with each run, Jackal, Don said, exasperated. How many buildings have we gone through that didn't have a boss? The houses don't count, the fighter replied. The permit building did. The library probably has one too, Miss said. We don't know that, Don replied. Everything the dungeon does is a test. If I were the dungeon, after sending us to the end of each floor to find the boss, I'd put it right by the entrance and laugh at all the runners passing it by because they expect it to be on the other side of the city. That's not actually a bad idea, Kenny said. I wouldn't laugh, Stowe replied solemnly. Tibbs rubbed his temple and wished they wouldn't comment. Searching the entire building just because the boss might be on this floor is going to take too long. Starting with the upper floor just because you think that's where the boss will be is going to take just as long. And what's the hurry? We can afford to be systematic since it's going to still be here on the next run. And considering there's only 4 teams doing this floor, I'm sure we can convince someone to put us back on the schedule early. Who's the 4th? Mez asked before Tibbs could point out that getting on the schedule again would take coins. I only heard about Miranda's team clearing the 3rd floor. I don't know. Some team of knights. Mayhaps we should retrain the focus on what is important instead of discussing who else runs this floor, Kumdar said. If we do not, if we do not have a method by which to determine what is the best way, does it matter which one we pick? Oh, it does, Don replied, pointing to the door to their left. That's the closest door, which means the closest one to potential loot, he added, and Jackal shut his mouth. You're just playing on my love of loot, the fighter grumbled. Of course, Don replied, then his confidence faltered. Is it working? Jackal let out a defeated sigh and headed for the door. That's a yes, Tibs said, grinning as he followed the fighter. And that concludes chapter 91 of Breaking Step. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe, hit the bell. If you want to read this book and the other in the series, they are up for free on Royal Road. If you want to read ahead of that and support me in the process that is on my Patreon, we're about 20 chapters ahead. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.